Good morning, everyone. This is Mortgage Pros 411. I'm Audrey Boissonou with Kevin Casey, and today we are joined by Bob Simpson. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm great.
Okay, so I just want you to know, in case you didn't see it, that Kevin's title for the flyer was all about fraud and wrongdoings and whistleblowing and all this stuff. And mine was Kevin is Fed chair. Kevin,
Okay.
a week ago, we were talking about how the poly markets were forecasting that what's his name? Rick Reeder. He was the BlackRock executive who was 47% likely to become the next Fed chair. And Kevin Warsh was, I think, at like 28% or something like that. And here we are a week later. And guess what? We have a Fed chair who's been nominated, not elected yet, but or confirmed, but nominated. And it is not who the poly markets thought. So, as with so many of our estimates and projections, it was total buckus.
Yeah, but he's supposed to be in favor of lowering rates, so
Okay, so
we will
here's
see.
right. Here's the trick though. So first of all, he was a former Fed governor, so that's something
Yep.
he's experienced. But also remember there are 19 members and 12 vote. And he's going to need to shift the consensus to get what he wants done.
Yep.
Also, he also has not previously been in favor of a lot of QE, the quantitative easing, and that has been something that has been happening again. So we'll see if he wants to continue that, right? I mean, who knows?
He also wants to make a lot of cuts in the staffing.
Well, that'll be interesting. And actually, if you look at the budgets of the Fed around the country and the different districts, it's very, very, very expensive. So we'll see. The other question is, will Jerome Powell stay on because his term as Fed chair ends in May, but he is allowed to stay on, and I can't remember, was it through January of next year or the year after? Anyway, he's got a ways to go if he chooses. So that will be interesting, right? So we're going to come back to the Fed statement, but just a little note. The government is partially shut down today. Yay, because we needed that again. That means that although we'll get the ADP jobs numbers tomorrow, we didn't have JOLTS today. We won't have BLS on Friday. So here we go again.
Well, you know what? If the job numbers aren't good, squelch them so they don't come out, and that'll keep the economy strong.
Kevin, I feel like you're suggesting there is some sort of malfeasance going on, and how dare you? How dare you? Okay, just a reminder to check out our past shows on YouTube. Our friend Jason Bellevue, who also happens to be the president of California Association of Mortgage Professionals this year, who had taken on that little task of making sure we had a YouTube channel. He is caught up. So check out those past episodes. And also from Jason this morning, he let us know that as of March 1st, 2026, SBA is changing their guidelines and only US citizens will be able to get an SBA loan, which will decrease SBA lending by somewhere between 35 and 40%. So, Kevin, what do you think that'll do to the value of businesses?
I think that's not a good thing for businesses that are trying to sell because suddenly they've lost 40% of their potential buyers. And so that's going to hurt the values of business. That's going to hurt the economy. Then businesses just aren't going to sell. Um, and they may end up just closing.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah.
Uh-huh. That might help the economy something. Not.
Well, listen, um, our friend Elon Musk has
Hmm.
stated that so much money is going to be made by utilizing AI that no one's going to have to work anymore.
Well,
And
that's true.
nobody needs to save for retirement because everything's already set. So,
I think I should have some AI buy out these business owners.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Although I guess they'd have to be a citizen to get an SBA loan.
you think? Because isn't that what we just talked about? Jeez Louise. Okay, so again, we're expecting ADP numbers tomorrow to be showing an increase of 50,000 jobs, but it could be higher, could be lower. Probably lower is the guess based on what we've seen recently. And that's it. So, Bob, did you see that we had our first bank failure of 2026, Metropolitan Capital out of Chicago?
Did not see that. Why'd they go under?
Oh, hang on. I have that information. And I quote, unsafe and unsound conditions and an impaired capital position. But the good news is this, it's only going to cost the FDIC $19.7 million this time with an M, not a B. How about
Oh,
that?
that's easy. Someone else could have handled that.
I mean, God, you can take that out of petty cash, no biggie, right? Yeah.
That's a rounding error for the rebuilding of the East Wing.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, yeah. Forget about the East Wing. How about the Kennedy Center? All right, moving right along, right along. Just a few things. PPI came in, Producer Price Index, higher than they expected, both headline and core. So that wasn't great news. But PCE came in for October and November, and that's what the feds really focus on. And it was down a little bit. So, but now we have another government shutdown. So who the hell knows what will happen? The Fed paused. Did you see that?
The Fed pause.
The Fed paused. They did not raise, they did not lower,
Oh, yes.
they just paused. So again, it will be interesting to see how that goes, and especially because we're going to have a little shift at the Fed. Their statement, they left rates unchanged at 3.3 and 5/8. Waller and Mirren dissented. They both wanted a 25 basis point cut. They upgraded the economic outlook, which I think is interesting. Job gains remained low. Unemployment rate has shown signs of stabilization and inflation remains somewhat elevated. Although, if you take out the shelter numbers and put in the real on the ground shelter numbers, it's not so bad. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. 15 of 19 of the uh, folks on the board think that the Fed funds rate is above neutral. And Jerome Powell is not,
Is above neutral?
pardon me?
The Fed fund rates is above
They think
neutral.
it's above neutral. So they think that we should.
So wouldn't you want to have above neutral when the economy is smoking hot, not when the economy seems to be slowing down?
Well, again, what did they say? They said that everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Everything is.
I was an econ major at UCLA,
Mhm.
and it was such a conservative Chicago school style economics course. There was no course on Marx. I mean, there was no class on Marx. But one of the courses that I took that was really interesting was the history of economics. And there's a guy you'll probably remember from history, Thomas Carlyle. He described economics as the dismal science, and it's a name that always stuck with economics because you can have opinions that bend things one way or another. It's dismal. If you're trying to be a fact-based guy, if you're trying to be a metrics-based guy, economics is dismal because you, just like you're pointing out, you can read these things in two different directions. And what the hell is that when you can go in both directions? Now, there's a I'm a I'm a fan of science in the same way that Harry Carey was a fan of baseball. Harry Carey could talk about baseball all day long, but he couldn't turn the double play. That's me with science. I can't split the atom. I got a B minus in physics. Okay. Okay. But physicists, there was a famous one who described geology as basically stamp collecting. There's no respect
Right.
for that science. Real science is physics. And I think economics is halfway between real science and geology, stamp collecting. It lends itself to politics so easily. No one's debating gravity. No one's debating force equals mass times acceleration. No one's debating it. Those are answers. But God damn it, we do this with economics all the time, and makes it worse when you throw not very smart politicians into the mix who have strong opinions. And God, there's nothing worse than a strong opinion when you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, they didn't call geology rocks for jocks in college for nothing, did they? With that being said, I just finished reading a book on astrophysics that was so way above my head, it was laughable. And I thought it was supposed to be like physics for dummies, but it was not for sure. Anyway, so again, like it's okay. I think it's okay to say what you don't know and to acknowledge that you don't know things. But to your point, we have so many people who are experts because they were elected to a position, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're qualified to make the decisions. And Kevin and I see this regularly when we go to Washington, D.C. or Sacramento, and we walk
Mm-hmm.
and let me tell you, it is on both sides of the aisle. So I am in no way disparaging one person over another. They don't know what the hell they're doing. So like affordability is the big buzzword these days, right? So the first question I ask to whomever we're speaking to, whether it is the actual senator or assembly person or legislator of whatever, or their aide, I'm like, what do you think affordability is? And the deer in the headlights looks we get when asked to explain what they're so concerned about, it's astonishing. So, yeah, it's yeah. Okay,
Speaking of across the aisle,
pardon me?
something hit the floor.
What's up?
Something hit the floor in California. Does
What
Audrey
hit the floor?
forget? Not know?
Oh, the trigger leads bill?
The trigger lease bill hit
Yes.
the floor in the California state triggers lead bill that because it'd be more enforceable than the federal one.
Well, it will be more enforceable as long as we have a regulatory agency that is who is willing to take it on. So it was actually the first question I asked, which is who's going to enforce it? Since we learned that lesson at the federal level, we have a federal trigger leads bill that took literally years and years and years to get passed, and then it's passed. In the meantime, they got the CFPB, which they assumed was going to administer it. And it turns out that it really isn't defined within the federal trigger lead bill who will be the enforcer. So at the state level, I'm like, definitely get on that now. Like while you're waiting for it to wind its way through the legislative process, talk to these regulatory agencies and make sure that we have somebody who is going to enforce it. So anyway, and it was
The one observation I have about Warsh coming in as the Fed, because of the whole dismal science thing, and he has kind of track records going in several directions, and he's been appointed by somebody who wants his will implemented. I would say that the one thing you can count upon is the uncertainty, the risk of it. I
right.
think that you can say, I don't know where this is going
Yep.
with some degree of surety. I think the mistake is to say, yeah, I know exactly what this guy's going to do, because don't forget, Trump appointed Powell too. So I think the thing that we can rely on is the uncertainty. And today's topic being risk, uncertainty is one of the things that all lenders are trying to assess, manage, contain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to point out that today's topic, first and foremost, was Kevin is bed share. Secondly, we're going to talk about risk for sure. And what do the markets hate more than anything? Uncertainty. So uncertainty is not our friend in this context at all. And actually, I took a picture of this slide that I saw, which I wish I was bright enough to get it onto the screen, but I can't. It says, our campaigns have never been filled with such vitriol, right? I think I saw this on NBS Highway, maybe. Anyway, so it was snippets from the election between Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, our founding fathers. So if you elect Thomas Jefferson, murder, robbery, rape, incest, and adultery will be practiced throughout the land. Are you prepared to see your dwellings in flames, female chastity violated, or children writhing on the pike? Okay, so that's John Adams about Thomas Jefferson. John Adams had to say about Thomas Jefferson, busy importing mistresses from Europe or trying to marry to a daughter of King George. A hideous, oh God, I don't even know how to say this. Hermaphroditical? Holy crap.
Hermaphroditic.
No, there's a col at the end. CAL. Okay, character
So it's an adverb. Hermaphroditical.
with neither the force or firmness of a man nor the gentleness or sensitivity of a woman. So we have a tendency right now and always, I think, to think, oh, this is the worst time ever. And let's be clear, this is not
It's
necessarily
always like this.
Okay, so let me give you another thing from Thomas Carlyle. This guy was born, I think, 1790s, and he was writing at the same time that Mark Twain was. And if you read Mark Twain, it's pretty racist, really. I mean, it's pretty racist. But Thomas Carlyle was arguing against the abolishment of slave labor in the West Indies, because if all of those plantations did not have free labor, they would descend into an overpopulated, uninhabitable Ireland.
Kevin, you got
How insulting is that? He
Yeah,
saw the West Indies
and you
disintegrating into Ireland. That
yeah.
was his
Well,
argument in favor of slave labor. So
know what?
goodbye, Tommy. See,
It's been a while since I read Mark Twain, but I believe that when I was younger, I read every single Mark Twain book. And in his defense, he was not racist. He was pointing out how awful racism was, from what I recall. But someone can correct me. We have a comment here from Sean. Geologists find oil, gold, silver, and copper, just to name a few important ore items with scientific techniques. Go easy on the rock guys. Okay, Sean, you have a good
yeah,
point.
and just for the record, jocks don't do rocks. They do sociology these days.
Well, that's not when I was in college. Okay, so so inflation. So it seems, again, we seem to be trending in the correct direction, which is down. We'll see what happens. I mean, all we know is that we don't know at this point. Apartment list showed for new rents in January, it was down 0.2 month over month, 1.4% year over year. Vacancy rate is at 7.3% and 41 days to lease, which is the longest on the market since they started tracking that number in 2017. So, it is there are things that are showing that inflation is easing, right? The
Yeah,
cost.
but is that seasonal rents or, because this is not the season to be renting. People tend to do the rents tend to go up in the summer, and we're in the middle of winter, so rents would be down just
Oh,
typically.
so they compared this month this month this year to this month last year. So they're comparing
Okay.
to apples. But I will say that Kevin does get the award for being the most analytical property manager owner that I've ever met in my entire life. So I defer to him on most things when it comes to rents, etc., because he does know his stuff. Um,
Yeah, well, I was listening to a report last 2 weeks ago. They were talking about how rents in San Francisco are at astronomical numbers, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should look at raising my rent, although I never do. But just curious, am I under the market? And no, the market was actually less than it was back in May when I rented out to the clients or my current tenants. I'm like, so where is this astronomical numbers of rent increases coming from when it's lower now than it was in May last year? But so are the reports, so the headlines go.
well, again, back to Bob's point, how to lie with statistics, right? I mean, we have referenced that book regularly,
Right
and
there, right over and there on
yeah,
my shelf behind me.
I mean that book is 75 years old and still holds up. I swear to
Yeah,
God.
it
So
does.
it's interesting too. GDP Q3 final, it showed that we were up 4.4%, which is crazy.
Well, by the way, I might digress, but we were talking about affordability with the senators and such. There's a headline this week that San Jose is the least affordable city in the country. Did you see that?
Okay, hang on about that because I thought
Actually, least affordable in the world.
world.
World. Yeah, and here I am working with a client who's trying to buy a house down in San Jose. It's only $4 million.
Okay, so
They
this
have $1 million sitting around and they're going to borrow $3 million because they're making somewhere in the upwards combined of like $600,000 a year. In their world, that house is really cheap.
Okay, I think this is interesting actually, because when they're talking about affordability, right? So ICE, which I pay attention to their mortgage monitor, they were showing the places in the country with the lowest non-current rates, the people who are delinquent versus the highest non-current rates.
Uh-huh.
some of the, I mean, okay, San Jose is number one on the list of the lowest non-current rates, which means less people are delinquent there.
Yeah, because they can afford those houses.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's also like, again, when we're talking about affordability, this whole swath of the country is considered to be not affordable. Yet, San Francisco, by the way, is number two on that list. San Diego is
Mhm.
three. Oxnard, California is number five. LA is number seven. Like Sacramento is number 12. So the people who are making their payments are here in this place
Mhm.
supposedly not affordable. Explain, please. And then on the highest non-current rates, we have Houston, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Columbia, South Carolina, Scranton, Pennsylvania, Birmingham, all places that are affordable, right? I mean, on the indexes. So I find that very interesting because
Yeah.
again, how we are quantifying this, and you do have to look at where you are in the country because if you are in, Florida or some other state where the incomes are much lower, maybe it seems tighter, et cetera, et cetera. But um, yeah, again, we need to focus on who can we help today? How do we help someone, right? Get away from this, okay, these big sweeping uh, oh God, the sky is falling. So NAR's Realtor Confidence Index in December showed that realtors were much more confident in Q1 2026, and they really believe that things are going to be better this year. And that's what we're seeing. So hopefully, pending sales, although this is crazy. So pending sales in December, signed contracts on existing homes. So they were down 9.3%. But think about when Christmas and New Year's hit. I mean, of Christmas week and New Year's week, how many days did you, well, Kevin, let's keep it real and don't try to make it sound good. How many days did you work in those weeks?
A lot, all of them.
Okay, Kevin's completely full of crap, just so you know. And I think that he is not alone, that most people took the better part of those 2 weeks off. Can we agree that that's possible, Kevin?
I think that's very likely.
Okay, the other thing to remember is that November was the fastest pace in 3 years. So what you're doing is month over month, you're measuring from the month before. So if November's numbers were way up and then December's numbers were way down, but you had 2 weeks where people weren't working much,
But you had 3 days in Thanksgiving area where people weren't working. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
I mean, everybody worked on Wednesday, so come on.
No, no.
And we had a pile of people. We always have this conversation like, do we have the show on these weeks? And we take typically 1 week off a year between Christmas and New Year's. And Kevin was pushing to ditch Thanksgiving this year, and we did it. And it was just a normal day. So I was very impressed with everybody. At least our people are little diligent workers. Maybe that's why productivity is better nationally. What do you think?
Possibly.
I wasn't working.
You weren't working, Bob? You're kidding. People aren't totally into compliance and bank secrecy during the holidays.
I coasted for a couple of weeks.
Oh, dare you. Okay, let's talk about delinquency for a minute, just because this is something that is our buyers are watching this. And when they see a headline like we saw, foreclosure filings rise 14% in 2025, that might cause concern, right? But reality is foreclosures are returning to normal. And even though there are increases, we're coming off of historically low numbers. A VA moratorium where there were zero more foreclosures on VA properties, and that was listed. And also remember that most of the delinquencies are FHA and VA, and they're not a large percent, and that is not a large percentage of the market. The other thing to remember too, and ICE often points this out, that the months that are ending on a Sunday, those delinquency numbers are higher because the payments that are paid on the last day of the month on the weekend don't post until a couple days later. And so it makes it look like the delinquency numbers are higher. Does that make sense?
Oh, so they actually are not higher. They just look higher.
Yes, exactly. So they point this out regularly enough that has really hit my consciousness and I really try and remember it. So delinquencies, um, slightly improved month over month, year over year. We ended the year at 3.68% delinquent. But on FHA, 13% of those loans are past due on their payments. So I think it's, we got to watch that. Um,
Well, like right now, we're in the slowest car sales month of the year. You know
okay.
why? Because there's only 28 days
Oh,
in
February.
February.
Oh, good point, Kevin.
Yeah,
I- It was something else. So anyway, you do want to watch the foreclosures. You do want to make sure you're there to help your clients because some of them really definitely need help. Also, FHA loss mitigation has really, really changed. So the number of people in FHA forbearance is doubled in Q4, but it's not the old forbearance where it just went on forever and ever and ever. It's like 3 to 6 months and then poof, you're out. So the 90 days delinquency in FHA rose by 26% in Q4, and the active foreclosures were up 20%. So that's FHA, which is struggling. It seems to me. So we'll see. The futures markets continue to think that the interest rates are going to stay around 6. So if you're waiting for some drastic drop in rates, get over it. Home affordability is at the best level in 4 years. And now quarter of US markets are back to or close to long-term affordability averages. That's great news. The inventory improvements had stalled since May. And as people who don't need to sell took their places off the market if they weren't getting the price they wanted, which is no news to us. We already knew that, right? So and equity, our total CLTV is still nationally 46.6%. There's more equity than debt in real estate, which is good news. And just for fun, the 25-year average for equity is 57.3%, and we're at 46.6%. So we are well off the 25-year average. So a reminder to our borrowers too that this K-shaped economy that they keep talking about, it's very, very driven by homeownership and the equity that homeowners have currently. Got it?
got it.
Okay, good. Okay, so Bob, because you are not just another pretty face with an amazing head of hair, which I admire every time I see you, let's talk about some of the things that are within your wheelhouse. Like, for instance, let's start with transparency and the Oreo index. And you're going to want to focus not just on the US, but Kevin is very, very interested in Finland and where they land in all this. So, can you walk us through what the transparency and I mean Oreo index, which I don't know why that name makes me laugh, but it does. It's an acronym, just to be clear.
Opacity in real estate ownership index. All right. I'm going to share a screen with y'all.
Oh, only if I let you. Hang on.
Let me share a screen.
I would
I'm going
love, hang on. I always have to figure out how. Just a second. Okay, it should be good now.
to, okay. I'm going to share this. Now, for most everybody listening, this is going to be new, I would think. My world is risk assessments, Bank Secrecy Act audits. I mean, this is a topic that most mortgage originators just don't really want to work with too much. But I want to introduce everybody today to a couple of international organizations. One is Transparency International, and they are in the business of ranking everybody's compliance and anti-fraud activity. Let me pull this up. This is over here, anti-money laundering frameworks. This is, are you well organized? This is real estate ownership data. Okay. Now, let me start with real estate ownership data. Look where England and Wales are. They are getting real high marks on real estate ownership data. Why? Because there's no such thing as an anonymous transaction in England and Wales. And as a matter of fact, all of the transfers of real estate in England and Wales are public record. There's no such thing as secret real estate deals. Now look at France, which is a little less on the real estate ownership data. Why is it a little less? And why is that here? Because France charges for the data. They have the same data, they just make you pay for it. So this is the attempt to rank everybody. The United States has a fair, above average level of property ownership information. I think anybody in the title business would say, "Oh yeah, we get it all. We get it all." We do pretty well. What are we in? 1, 2, 3, 4. We're in 5th place worldwide, just beating out Russia. Yikes!
Wow.
Yikes! All right. So the anti-money laundering framework. How good are your controls? We're third from the bottom. We're third from the bottom. And when we tried to, here's data completeness, availability, and openness. Here's everybody ranked, and here's the United States. So data completeness, we do, title people would tell you, we do a pretty good job of the data, pretty good. We have geographic targeting orders where if you're buying real estate in certain areas, you know, you have to disclose if it's being paid in cash. And then hang on, don't let me make you sick. I know this is just terrible. Hang on, there's one other I wanted to show you. Oh, 7. Hold on.
Hold on.
Well, while you're doing this, I actually had a little work with this just recently with a client who had a property in Canada. And in Canada, you can't find out how much someone pays for their property taxes online. It's private information. They don't disclose it. So it was a real challenge for me to get that document. The client had to write to the tax reporter and get the documents from them directly in order to show what the property tax was on this property that they owned in Canada.
All right, so this one here addresses that. It's your general Oreo index, opacity in real estate owned. So do we know? Well, here's Canada. They're better than we are. We're down here. We are better than South Korea and Australia. Australia, for some weird reason, gets terrible grades.
Huh.
I don't know what's going on in Australia. It would be a worthwhile, but look at South Africa. Look at Singapore. I would expect this out of Singapore. I'm surprised by France. I'm not surprised by Germany. But we aren't playing a lot.
Well,
Just with this new administration, they said we're not going to have people file beneficial ownership information reports if you're a domestic corporation. And the whole world blew a gasket. They were like, wait a minute. We're trying to get the whole world to not have anonymous real estate transactions. And we're already, this report was generated just before the new administration came in. But what the world is, their opinion of us is, hey, you were already third from the bottom, and now you are saying you're not going to require the disclosure of who owns real estate. Let me
Okay, so
point. Go ahead, Audrey.
I just want to be clear on what the difference is between that chart and the previous chart.
So what they do is they say that last chart was the overall grade you are getting, okay, the index results. And so look at the bottom, the blue one, you may not be able to read it, but it says real estate data, okay? And we do a pretty good job with real estate data. I would say we're tied for 5th place, okay? Look at the bottom. Look at the bottom here. Here's us. The blue is real estate data. But AML framework, we're terrible. South Korea is worse. Australia is worse.
Yeah.
But in terms of guarding against money laundering in our real estate, we just do a terrible job. So you might say, well, what's South Africa doing? What's Singapore doing? There's no such thing as anonymous transactions. They verify when you're paying a second, who is the corporation that's being paid off. They do all kinds of things to make sure that assets are not being redirected. And with this terrible score here for our AML framework, it's kind of disheartening. It's kind of disheartening that we're not taking the criminality of money laundering seriously.
Well, I think to point out that this whole conversation was happening and it was a whipsaw back and forth and back and forth, like what, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And it kept going from, we are going to have BOI, we're not going to have it, we are going to have it. And it was very controversial then. And so this is something that seems to transcend administrations in the fact that it's like people they want to have their privacy, but there is also the other side of it, which is a lot of real estate in the US is owned by these shell corporations, and you don't know where that money came from and whether it was legitimate or not legitimate, whether, who owns it, who doesn't own it. And that's the question and the concern. Yes.
That's right. That's right. And my point is that we do not make our decisions in a vacuum. Everybody looks at us. What's the United States doing? Well, they're collecting good data. Hooray for their title companies. Do they have a good AML framework? Nah, they said we're not going to require people to disclose beneficial owners in a corp. Oh, God, the whole world just goes, come on, guys. I mean, that's how criminals do their thing, right? Let me point out this. I'd be happy. Anybody listening today, if you want more information on these two, you can email me and I'll send you information. But this is FATF. I don't like calling them FATF. I call them the FATF. This is a Paris-based
What's F?
FATF. I know, it's just FATF, not good.
Okay.
Anyway, I call them FATF.
Gotcha.
It is a Paris-based voluntary group, financial action task force, that ranks countries on their efforts to fight financial crime. Okay, so if I click here on the blue and gray lists, there are only, I think, 3 countries on the black list. You can't do business with North Korea, with Iran, with Myanmar. You can't do business with them. But then you've got a ton of these countries, a lot of Africa, Algeria, Angola, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, that are on the gray list. And this is a remediation. If you have your BSA audit and you get a remediation, okay, are you going to fix it? This is the FATF's remediation list. These guys have things they need to repair. But if you click here on this website, it's FATF-GAFI.org. My French is so terrible, I will not try and even enunciate what GAFI stands for. But here are the member countries, and you can read about their protocols to fight fraud, their protocols. Now, Finland was of interest, was it not?
Yeah.
Yep.
Look at where Finland is. Good old Finland. Here's what they rank you on. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 40. You see this? There are 40 recommendations that the FATF has made to the world, to all these participating nations, about how to prevent money laundering, how to prevent financial crime from infecting what we're doing. Okay, so Finland ranks number 2 in the world. Kevin, you'll be pleased to know.
Yeah, they were number 1 when I was there, but since I left,
Now wait a minute. Did you say you spent a month there?
I did spend a month there. It was a Rotary project, and I got to visit every bank. There was five of them. Met with the president of each bank. Got to hear about how they manage their securities and their guidelines. It was quite interesting, although it got repetitive. By the fifth person, I just told them to stop because I already knew all the answers. And we just talked about mortgages in Finland instead of that. He liked that conversation much better. Um,
He that he stopped him after the second explanation, assuming that he knew the next three, and that he did not wait till number five to say, "I know all this."
well, so I had actually, in his particular case, I had spoken with someone else from his bank on the first or second day in Finland. And so when I went to his bank to meet the president, he started into the exact same presentation that the other four banks had done and his previous employer had started. I got a quick question. Is this all regulated? You're only allowed to talk about certain things? And he goes, yes. How'd you know? I go, oh, just a hint. No, it was quite funny. But the one takeaway I took away, they're very proud of the fact that they have the highest ethical standards in the world. Um, and the one example of that was I always share the story of you drive down the road in Finland near the out in the country, and by the side of the main road is usually a pile of timber. And Finnish timber is not like a California timber where, we've got like these things that are 4 foot wide trunks. Finland's trunk maybe might be 1 foot diameter or rate diameter, yeah. Um, and so a guy or two guys with a pickup truck could easily pull over on the side of the road and start throwing the timber into the back of the pickup truck. And oh, of all European countries, they're the one who have a bunch of American pickup trucks. So they could do this, but they don't. And when I ask, well, why doesn't anyone just take the thing? It's, oh, we don't do that kind of thing here in Finland. And that was an answer I constantly got whenever I'd ask, well, so why doesn't anyone just take all the bikes that are parked out in front of the grocery store? They're not locked. Oh, we don't do that kind of thing here in Finland. Um, and then I finally dug down the answer that yes, they do. They just kind of live in a world where they believe it doesn't happen. That was my takeaway from Finland. The other takeaway I had was they don't have an MLS. If you want to sell your house in Finland, you go to your bank. They don't have real estate agent office independent, and your bank determines what your house is worth, and that's what they sell it for. And I asked them the same question I asked all the other people about the timber and the bikes. So what would stop the sales guy from just lowering the price of your house and selling it to his best buddy for a cheaper price? And his answer was, oh, we don't do that kind of thing here in Finland. I go, how do you know? Yeah, I don't know. We just
Well,
don't.
Kevin sold a property in Wales not too long ago, and it was the same there where there was no central listing for properties, etc. Right, Kevin? It was a that was
No, it
that's
was a little bit similar.
that's
Um,
not what we then.
No, I had to. Yeah, so I went to a real estate office, um, and they had some data they shared with me,
Right.
uh,
So
and they came up with an idea. But it was interesting because they kind of did it very similar to the way we do in San Francisco, where they start with a low price and then they get a bidding war going. That was their strategy for sales.
and that didn't happen on your property at all. At
Right.
all. This is a completely different story than you told me then.
No, that was what that was their sales approach. I got the numbers. They wanted, it was 130,000 pounds or something like that was what they'd start with, and they would sell it for about 150. I ended up settling with the neighbor just on a handshake. So
One whole line of my family comes from Wales.
I've
you're
I've
kind of tall for that.
I've tried I've tried looking for properties in Ireland, in England, in Wales, and there is no central place. They're
Oh no, Ireland's very different. Yeah, Ireland just does auctions.
all over the place. Like you have
Yeah.
to individual real it's crazy. Okay, that's way off topic. But again, does that satisfy your talk about Finland itch, Kevin?
Yeah, that's good.
Good. Okay, good. Okay, back to you, Bob.
Okay. All right. So, um, one of the areas where I find that probably all of our listeners need some help on is risk assessment. So we're looking at anti-money laundering dangers, and you see where we're kind of out of step with the rest of the world on some things. I did a BSA audit here recently, and the risk assessment was one Excel sheet. That was it. One, just like 20 lines and 3 columns. And you do need to give your risk assessment some more heft, right? So your risk assessment comes in a down market. People get creative, falsifying documents. You gotta be aware that that's what they do. Real estate agents get desperate. Originators get desperate, and they try and sneak things past the goalie. What do you do? What do you do as a mortgage company if one of your loan officers says, "Wow, these guys over in this Remax office are just pushing me to put through things that shouldn't close"? What do you do? What do you do? They're not technically your client. They're the referral source, Remax C21, whatever. They're not technically your client, but they're a danger if they're pushing your people to do things that are dishonest, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So when you're assessing your risks, sure, it's interest rates, it's fraud, it's catastrophes. I mean, I used to think it was outrageous when my clients, the MI companies, would ask me what my plan was in the event of a pandemic. And I was like, I don't know, just die. I mean, what do I do in a pandemic? I used to think that the question was unreasonable. Well, it's not unreasonable. And what do you do if? And that's the thing for any compliance people here, for any BSA officers. You want to be so creative that you're never surprised that on page 17, line 4, you thought about this particular thing. And there's no such thing as too wild, because we've seen wild things. So spend the time, given your book, your geography, your types of loans you do, your people. Are you in one county, or are you across the nation? Do you know everybody, or is it anonymous? And really give some thought to your risk assessment. Give it a couple days, go through it, and I originated for 10 years, right? I've done the loan officer thing. Talk to your loan officers, talk to your processors, talk to your underwriters about what they see coming through that might be a risk. Okay. There's no substitute for experienced people chiming in with what they see, and then you document it in your risk assessment.
If you're an independent mortgage broker and you are in an office by yourself, stand in front of the mirror and talk to yourself about what you're seeing, but also get out of your office and go to industry events and be around other mortgage professionals and get on a show like this where you're talking about the different issues that we're seeing pop up, so that you're aware of them when something, sets off that little alarm bell in your head and you're like, wait,
Yep.
doesn't sound right. Because ever since we started doing loans, we've had to deal with this, Bob. Like this comes up because there's always going to be someone who says, well, the LO down the street said they will do it. And we
Right.
make a decision about whether that LO belongs in prison and whether we should chop off their NMLS number, or if they're right and maybe we're bringing too conservative. And there sometimes is that area where, okay, you're erring on the side way of caution and you're too much to one side. But then you definitely don't want to go the other direction and end up in trouble. So it is something that I think that we are constantly doing with every time you take a loan app, the potential for someone to suggest that they're going to owner occupy a property when they're not really they're going to see it when they're not, et cetera, et cetera. Or, does that income look right? Is that pay stub, does that look real? And especially now when things can be generated so easily with AI, and it doesn't.
I asked a room full of underwriters one time. It was actually in New Orleans, and it was a room full of underwriters. How many of you think $10,000 a month is acceptable, normal, possible for someone who works in a salon, a hair salon? 10,000 a month. And 20 hands went up. Oh yeah, that's possible.
Well,
Okay.
Bob, kids are
Okay. That's not my experience. How does that happen? And then I got this great lecture from all these people. Well, if you're a colorist,
Yep.
I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. So I thought it was complete BS, but apparently it's possible.
Yep.
But I'm going to make this argument. It's possible if you're working at a salon in Bellagio. It is not possible if you're in a North Las Vegas strip mall. So there is a experience that we all have in the lending industry about what people make, what's normal, what's acceptable. I always love the fact that my kids, and I know we're short of time, my kids, three of them got to work for me at IMARC when we were doing mortgage fraud investigations. So three of my kids got into hundreds and thousands of loan files to re-verify employment and assets and everything. So my kids knew if you're a 42-year-old engineer in Seattle working for Boeing, you made about this much. If you were in St. Louis, you made about this much. And I always loved the fact by the time my kids were 23 or 4, they had a really good appreciation for what's normal, what's out there, what people have in the bank, this kind of thing. And you've got to grab that experience that your people have. I tell people, you have to know normal to identify abnormal, right?
Yep.
So $10,000, it catches my eye. Oh, you're at Bellagio. Okay, I'll give you that, right?
I would say if you're at the Bellagio, that's not where you're making the money. They've got you on minimum wage plus tips. It's the person that has a salon on Union Square in San Francisco. They're making for sure. If you,
I had that one, and they were making 100 grand a month.
yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, and I mean, I just had a client tell me it cost him $32,000 to move from across the country. I'm like, I was trying to back out of the math and figure out how to make that number make any sense to me. So to say that, yeah, we have to do our homework these days because what seems like it's reasonable is ridiculous.
Actually, speaking of reasonable, one of the things on this chart you shared with me about corruption in different countries and such was the question of what percentage of the people polled had paid a government bureaucrat a bribe.
Oh,
Did you see that, Bob?
No.
Yeah, that was one of the tell times of how they come up with their numbers and how many people. And I'm thinking, oh, I've never paid a bribe in my life to a government official. I've never come up. But we were talking about Rotary. I am involved in Rotary. One of the things when Rotary is trying to do a project in a quote unquote third world country, there's a whole training on paying bribes.
yeah.
And in some countries, it's expected to pay a bribe in order to get things done. But what Rotary teaches is don't pay more than the regular bribe. Because if you pay more just to get your job done, you have just screwed everybody else coming behind you. And
That's
so
right.
it's okay to pay a bribe if it's within the range, and then you have to keep it down because if you suddenly pay more, then they will expect more in the future.
Kevin, so you've never paid a government official, but I bet you paid a lot of police officers bribes, haven't you? Oh,
No, no, never, not a one.
I think that kind of just smack myself.
Mhm.
You had a great quote, Mike. Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. So you want to make sure that you're thinking ahead on these things and you do have a plan for when they come up. One of the things I wanted to make sure we talked about was where you're seeing the enforcement come from right now, because we know, I mean, Kevin is following a CFPB complaint right now. So stand by on an update on that, right, Kevin?
Yeah.
But we're hearing the states don't have a whole lot of bandwidth for this extra oversight. Where is the oversight coming from? And can we expect a look back at some point down the road by someone who says, okay, you should have been doing it this way 2025 and 26, but you weren't. Now I was gonna say something. I won't say it.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think the states are going to lift up some of this. But the federal level, things have been fairly well gutted. I remember in 2008, 2009, talking to my friend Bill Matthews, who started the SAFE Act. He was with the Conference of State Bank Supervisors, and he was right place, right time. He had that legislation ready to go, and it got passed right at the collapse, and that's where that SAFE Act, NMLS, came to be. And he and I talked at the time and said, I give this 15 years until they undo all the protections.
Oh,
I
wow.
give,
Really?
yeah, we both said I give it 15 years. And
How
sure,
many years now
well,
has it been? It's been 16.
He's right on target.
I'm not far off.
Yeah.
We
People have short memories, and
see increase in fraud. Is that happening right now? And if we are, what it
no,
look like?
we've gotten smarter as originators. We've gotten smarter about the stuff we accept, but there are people looking to sneak one past your goalie all the time.
Right.
Do a DSCR loan, and I'm really going to live there. I'm just going to tell you it's going to be a rental because my income is crap. That goes on, and you know, there's all kinds of ways to one of the schemes that I see common is miracle employment, where the guy has really crappy employment history for the last year. It's a couple of jobs, not even the same industry. One of them's commission, one of them's hourly, one of them's on terrible job history. But today they land a job with XYZ Corp, and they spend 2 months there on a nice salary, call it 10,000 a month. Well, that company is actually the borrower's brother, and when employment gets verified, he's working there. The pay stub's real. You
Yep.
know, you can say the guy's working there. The only problem is the fraud is there's no possibility of continued employment when the loan closes. And notice what small change 20 grand is when you're talking about buying a house. You know, if somebody's going to buy the house and take out a second or something later, if the problem was income, that's how things are getting solved. And I see that pretty frequently.
Right.
Wow.
That's also a question on the application is, are you related to your employer?
You have to say whether you are.
You also have to state whether you're related to the seller and real estate agent and
Your sweetness and innocence is so appealing.
Oh my God. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I just want to take a moment and remind everyone that the rates are the rates, and they're going to go up, go down, probably more like stay a lot the same right now. Hopefully, we hope they don't go up, but we are in charge of our own destiny. So, MBA mortgage applications come out weekly. Purchases are up 18% year over year. Refis are up 156% year over year. If your numbers are not reflecting this, then you need to take a look at what you're doing and focus on your progress. Don't be down on yourself thinking, oh my God, I'm such a loser. I haven't done anything. Because if you had one refi in January 2025 and you have two in January 2026, you had huge growth and you should be very proud of yourself. So work on changing your habits, work on focusing on who can we help today. That, in my opinion, needs to become the battle cry for the entire industry going forward. Not how can I bump up my quarterly profits? How can I make more money so I can have 13 private jets instead of just one? None of that matters. Who can we help today? So, with that, who can we help today? How do we stay compliant and keep our little tails out of trouble and close some more loans, right?
yeah, and we didn't go into is those guys that are in trouble with their licenses or did we talk about that last week?
I think we did. I think
Yeah.
I forgot my life, but I think we did. Yeah, more people are doing more squirrely stuff around their licensing, which just infuriates the crap out of me. So anyway, we are very lucky to be in this industry. We are very lucky to be able to help people. And Bob, we are very lucky to know you. And we thank you so much for your insight and the constant reminder that we need to keep our eye on making sure that we're doing the right thing. We're thinking things ahead of time and staying compliant because you never know.
I value both you guys. You both want to do the business right. Love you.
Yep. Love you too. Mwah. Have a great week, everyone.